I'm Jeremy. Today's day 371 of reading, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Let's get started. We are currently on page 140. And fidgeting restlessly. Only when Fudge spoke again did they settle down. Yes, said Fudge again, shuffling his notes. Well, then, so the charges. Yes. He extricated a piece of parchment from the pile before him, took a deep breath, and read, The charges against the accused are as follows. That he did knowingly, deliberately, and in full awareness of the illegality of his actions, have received a previous written warning from the Ministry of Magic on a similar charge, produce a patroness charm in a Muggle-inhabited area in the presence of a Muggle on August the 2nd at 23 minutes past 9, which constitutes an offense under paragraph C of Decree for Reasonable Restriction of Underage Sorcery 1875, and also under section 13 of the International Confederation of Wizards Statute of Secrecy. You are Harry James Potter of number 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey, Fudge said, glaring at Harry over the top of his parchment. Yes, Harry said. You received an official warning from the Ministry for using illegal magic 3 years ago, did you not? Yes, and yet you conjured a patroness on the night of the 2nd of August, said Fudge. Yes, said Harry, but knowing you are not permitted to use magic outside school while you are under age of 17. Yes, but knowing that you were in an area full of muggles. Yes, but fully aware that you were in close proximity to a muggle at the time. Yes, said Harry angrily, but I only used it because we were... The witch with the monocle on Fudge's left cut across him in a booming voice. You produced a fully fledged patroness? Yes, said Harry, because a corporeal patroness? A what? Said Harry. Your patroness had a clearly defined form? I mean to say it was more than vapor or smoke? Yes, said Harry, feeling both impatient and slightly desperate. It's a stag. It's always a stag. Always, boomed Madame Bones. You have produced a patroness before now? Yes, said Harry. I've been doing it for over a year. And you are 15 years old? Yes, and you learned this at school? Yes. Professor Lupin taught me in my 3rd year because of the... Impressive, said Madame Bones, staring down at him. A true patroness at the age. Very impressive indeed. Some of the wizards and witches around her were muttering again. A few nodded, but others were frowning and shaking their heads. It's not a question about how impressive the magic was, said Fudge in a testy voice. In fact, the more impressive, the worse it is. I would have thought, given that the boy did it in plain view of a muggle. Those who had been frowning now murmured in agreement, but it was the sight of Percy's sanctimonious little nod that goaded Harry into speech. I did it because of Dementors, he said loudly before anyone could interrupt him again. He had expected more muttering, but the silence that fell seemed to be somehow denser than before. Dementors? Said Madame Bones after a moment, raising her thick eyebrows so that her monocles looked in danger of falling out. What do you mean, boy? I mean there were 2 Dementors down that alleyway and they went for me and my cousin. Ah, said Fudge again, smirking unpleasantly as he looked around at the Wizengamot, as though inviting them to share this joke. Yes, I thought we'd be hearing something like this. Dementors and Little Winging? Madame Bones said, in tones of great surprise. I don't understand. Don't you, Amelia? Said Fudge, still smirking. Let me explain. He's been thinking it through and decided Dementors would make a very nice little cover story. Very nice indeed. Muggles can't see Dementors, can they, boy? Highly convenient. So it's just your word and no witnesses. I'm not lying, said Harry loudly over another outbreak of muttering from the court. There were 2 of them, coming from opposite ends of the alley. Everything went dark and cold, and my cousin felt them and ran for it. Enough, said Fudge, with a very supercilious look on his face. I'm sorry to interrupt what I'm sure would have been a very well-rehearsed story. Dumbledore cleared his throat. The Wizengamot fell silent again. We do, in fact, have a witness to the presence of Dementors in the alleyway, he said. Other than Dudley Dursley, I mean. Fudge's plump face seemed to slacken, as though somebody had let air out of it. He stared down at Dumbledore for a moment or two, then, with the appearance of a man pulling himself back together, said, We haven't got time to deal with more taradiddles, I'm afraid, Dumbledore. I want this dealt with quickly. I may be wrong, said Dumbledore pleasantly, but I am sure that under the Wizengamot Charter of Rights, the accused has the right to present witnesses for his or her case. Isn't that the policy of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Madame Bones? He continued, addressing the witch in the monocle. True, said Madame Bones. Perfectly true. Oh, very well, snapped Fudge. Where is this person? I brought her with me, said Dumbledore. She's just outside the door. Should I? No, Weasley, you go, Fudge barked at Percy, who got up at once, hurried down the stone steps from the judge's balcony, and hastened past Dumbledore and Harry without glancing at them. A moment later, Percy returned, followed by Mrs. Figg. She looked scared and more batty than ever. Harry wished she had thought to change out of her carpet slippers. Dumbledore stood up and gave Mrs. Figg his chair, conjuring a second one for himself. Full name, said Fudge loudly when Mrs. Figg had perched herself nervously on the very edge of her seat. Arabella Doreen Figg, said Mrs. Figg in her quavery voice. And who exactly are you? Said Fudge, in a bored and lofty voice. I'm a resident of Little Winging, close to where Harry Potter lives, said Mrs. Figg. We have no record of any witch or wizard living in Little Winging other than Harry Potter, said Madame Bones at once. That situation has always been closely monitored, given past events. I'm a squib, said Mrs. Figg, so you wouldn't have me registered, would you? A squib, eh? Said Fudge, eyeing her closely. We'll be checking that. You'll leave details of your parentage with my assistant, Weasley. Incidentally, can Squibs see Dementors? He added, looking left and right along the bench where he sat. Yes, we can, said Mrs. Figg indignantly. Fudge looked back down at her, his eyebrows raised. Very well, he said coolly. What is your story? I had gone out to buy cat food from the corner shop at the end of Wisteria Walk, shortly after 9 on the evening on the 2nd of August, gabbled Mrs. Figg at once, as though she had learned what she was saying by heart, when I heard a disturbance down the alleyway between Magnolia Crescent and Wisteria Walk. On approaching the mouth of the alleyway, I saw the Dementors running. Running? Said Madame Bones sharply. Dementors don't run. They glide. That's what I meant to say, said Mrs. Figg quickly, patches of pink appearing on her withered cheeks. Gliding along the alley toward what looked like 2 boys. What did they look like? Said Madame Bones, narrowing her eyes so that the monocle's edges disappeared in a flash. Well, one was very large, and the other was rather skinny. No, said Madame Bones impatiently. The Dementors! Describe them! Oh, said Mrs. Figg, the pink flush creeping up her neck now. They were big and wearing cloaks. Harry felt a horrible sinking in the pit of his stomach. Whatever Mrs. Figg had said to the contrary, it sounded to him as though the most she could have ever seen was a picture of Dementor, and a picture could never convey the truth of what these beings were like. The way they moved, hovering inches over the ground, or the rotting smell of them, or that terrible rattling noise they made as they sucked on the surrounding air. A dumpy wizard with a large black mustache in the second row leaned close to his neighbor, a frizzy-haired witch, and whispered something in her ear, and she smirked and nodded. Big and wearing cloaks, repeated Madame Bones coolly, while Fudge snorted derisively. I see. Anything else? Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to read page 145. Bookmark, close. Peace out.